Hello friends, this is Tim Collins coming to you again with our weekend word. Moses had died. Joshua was tasked with leading the children of Israel into the conquest of Canaan, and it seemed like a daunting task. Most of the people had lived for their entire lives in the wilderness. Now they would become warriors. They would take over the Canaan land that God had promised to Abraham. But this was unfamiliar territory. Most of the older people had died in the wilderness. Just Joshua and Caleb were left of people who were under 65 years old. And so God had some instructions for Joshua. I'm going to read the first 9 verses of Joshua chapter 1 and focus on the 9th verse. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people, get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country, to the great sea on the west. No one will be able to stand up against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their forefathers to give them. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. Do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. And the 9th verse, have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. 3 times in that passage, God told Joshua, and vicariously the rest of the nation of Israel, be strong and courageous. You see, over and over, the Bible says, do not be afraid, fear not. Faith takes courage. When you are about to go into the unknown, you don't know what's going to happen. Now, faith tells you that we know how it's going to come out, but you don't know what you're going to go through during the time between now when you take a step of faith and when you come out. You don't know what all it holds, and the unknown is very scary for all of us. Joshua had probably seen the giants in the land 40 years before, and he was confident God would handle it, but it still took courage to take that step of faith. When we're faced with the decision whether to obey God, we know it's going to be okay in the end. We just don't know what we're going to go through meanwhile. An example is in the story of the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from Daniel chapter 3. I'm going to read 3 verses beginning with 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. You see, when they were called to stand before Nebuchadnezzar because they chose to obey God rather than Nebuchadnezzar, first thing they tell Nebuchadnezzar, we don't have to defend ourselves. God is our defense, in other words. We don't have to defend ourselves. We simply have to obey God. Verse 17 says, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save us from it, and he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But even if he does not, I love this statement of faith. See, I know God can save us from this furnace, but even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. See, they weren't sure whether they would go into the furnace or not, but they were sure they were going to obey God's commands. They had no control over the king in the furnace. They had control over what they did. And they chose to obey God. Can I tell you something? It is a very dangerous person who chooses to take God at his word, who will take the step of faith that God commands and just see what God will do. Well, perhaps you're faced with a similar decision. You're facing stepping into the unknown. If you trust God, you know how it's going to come out, but you don't know what you're going to go through meanwhile. The Bible admonishes you over and over and over. Be strong. Be courageous. You see, God's on your side. If you have chosen to give God your life and allow him to make a new creature, you have a covenant with God who says He will defend you against every adversary. Be strong, be courageous. You can step into the unknown. You can take that step of faith, even though you don't know what's happening next. You can take that step of faith knowing simply that God is on your side, and it's all going to come out in the end no matter what you go through. Well, I hope you'll be in church somewhere Sunday worshiping God in spirit and in truth. God bless you. We love you.